Welcome to 15 Minutes of Mental Toughness with your host, Dr. Rob Bell. Dr. Rob interviews expert coaches, executives, and athletes about mental toughness and their hinge moments. The Hinge. It connects who we are with who we become, and it only takes one. And now for your host, Dr. Rob.
So I went on the mission trip, had a great time. We spent 7 days on the mountain, and I thought I was going to die, but whatever, from Miami, postmenopausal grandma, first mountain, let's do Kili, let's go. We don't even have hills.
You went big.
Yeah, we don't even have hills in Miami, But I'm very like you, right? Summit or die. I'm gonna summit or I'm gonna die trying. And you know what, Rob? When I came back from that trip, I sat my husband and my kids and my mom down, and I said, listen, I'm retiring from Tidal. They thought I'd fallen and hit my head on the mountain or lost too much oxygen at the top.
Hey, this is Dr. Rob Bell. If you want a free ebook, the best mental toughness quotes that will make you better, just text Dr. Rob Bell, that's DrRobBell, to this number, 33444. You'll get a download right away.
Are you one of nearly 7 in 10 Americans who doesn't feel fully rested when the alarm clock rings? Do you dread your mornings? Let's change that. SomSleep is a drug-free, non-habit-forming sleep drink in a small can that can help save your nights from tossing and turning. Find out for yourself at getsom.com and stop dreading your alarm. SomSleep. It gives you Z's.
After years of building, operating, and growing her own successful business, our guest took her experience and love of philanthropy to travel to Africa on a climb to Mount Kilimanjaro as part of a mission to change the world for Maasai children. Can't wait to hear that. But our guest, since she reached the peak of 19,000 feet, she's re-envisioned the importance of the power of generosity. Our guest has helped businesses and individuals connect genuinely, give generously, and reach a level of success and fulfillment that means more to her clients than just the bottom line. Our guest is a keynote speaker, professional certified coach, author, and host of the Dreamers Succeed podcast. Fantastic podcast. And as the founder of Dreamers Succeed, our guest, an internal optimist, is Berna Medina. Berna, thank you so much for joining us.
Yay! So great to be here, Rob. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and I'm so grateful to you for the invitation to spend some time with you.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
So I'm so glad we've been connected for probably about a year now. It's been fantastic. Mm-hmm. You're definitely one of those people that everyone refers to. So what I mean is, if you're ever in a meeting, somebody's always like, well, you have to meet so-and-so. Berta is the one. We're like, oh, well, you have to meet Berta. And after you do, it's pretty evident why. But let me start with this. I mean, you're a first-generation American. You classified like you were an only child, but you were never alone. Talk to us about that experience and then growing up, because I think you have a special, unique experience that most don't.
Sure. I love that, Rob. Thank you for that invitation. So yes, first-generation American. My mom got here in 1965. So the timing was perfect because I was born in 1967. And we were the typical, first generation, just born to Cuban immigrant parents who were just, immigrating into the United States. And we had that blended, what to a Cuban is a normal family, grew up in a 3-generation home. So we had my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom. My father actually went back to Cuba when my mom was 5 months pregnant. And then my aunt, whose husband was a truck driver and he was all around the country. So we had this little community. And then I grew up with myself and 4 cousins. So we were together from when we were born practically until we all got married. And it really, really gave a very unique perspective. For us, it was very normal because that being in a multi-generational home where our nucleus is what everybody else considers extended was really enriching for me. We had the father figure in the home was my grandfather, got here when he was 60 years old, retired police officer in Cuba, and was the proudest American I've ever known, So he was Mr. Optimistic, wouldn't take welfare or government cheese, and he worked 3 jobs to make sure that all of us were taken care of. My mom worked as well. My grandma sort of did all the cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids. And then my aunt was the only driver in the house, and she was everybody's chauffeur. So it really was, whether it was intentional or not, it really worked out well for us. We were poor, but we didn't know it at the time. And, there was always enough for piano lessons and ballet, or just enough for piano lessons and ballet. And an encyclopedia, not clothes or all the other things you wanted, but the important stuff. So it was really, really cool. I feel very blessed that I got to grow up in that kind of an environment.
Yeah. So I bring that up because you've mentioned before the importance of your grandfather. And I was wondering if you could tell us a story about, because when I believe he was in his 80s and he had a stroke.
Yeah.
And talk to us about then, how, because he was so focused on, American citizenship. Talk right. to us about that experience.
Sure. So my grandpa was, again, just one of these people who was so grateful for this country, for taking him in, allowing him to work 3 jobs. He started with 3 jobs, then 2 jobs, then down to 1 job, which he retired from when he was 82 years old. He wanted to make sure we were all colleged, we were all married, and we were all sort of standing on our own 2 feet before he finally accepted retirement. So when he was 84, he told everyone, okay, now I'm going to go and I'm going to become an American citizen, which is something I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to do it. So he starts that process. And 2 months into the process, he suffers a stroke. And it was like a bad stroke. And, we're at the hospital and we're freaking out, and everybody's just trying to, make sense of what's happening. He's always been an otherwise healthy man, walks, 4 or 5 miles a day, was just part of his routine. And so when the smoke finally clears, the doctor's in there and he says, hey, do you have any questions for me? And my grandfather's, his mouth is crooked and he can't move one side of his body. And he says, am I going to be able to raise my right hand to swear in as an American citizen? That's what he was worried about. He wasn't worried about, am I ever going to be able to walk again? It was just, am I going to be able to raise my right hand to swear in as an American citizen? And I thought that's something that has always stuck with me, because I know how extremely patriotic I am and how much love we have for this country, my cousins and I. And it was nothing ever that he's preaching to us or telling us that sort of thing. It was very subtle, but it was very evident. There was always an American flag in our home growing up. And my grandfather was able to eventually, recover from the stroke. He was in rehab, at the hospital, admitted in the hospital for a month, and really did well, thank God, after that. So then he was able to swear in and become an American citizen. That was a whole big deal. We had a party and everybody was there, and he just he was so celebratory about that. And then you fast forward, I want to say 15 years after that or something like that. And my cousin, his oldest grandson, was graduating from the police academy. So my cousin wanted to make sure that my grandfather attended the ceremony, because it was sort of his way of honoring his legacy. And we're sitting there. My grandfather's by this time is well into the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease. We brought him in on the wheelchair, but he's barely there. You know what I mean? And just didn't really know what was going on. And all of a sudden they brought out the American flag and they started playing the national anthem. And my grandfather lowered his head, and he always wore a little sailor's cap, and he removed it from his head and he stood up. Slowly but surely he stood up from his wheelchair. So we're in shock, because we're thinking, what is happening right now? And the people around him who didn't know him were like, hey, it's okay, sit down. And I'm thinking, man, they have no idea. My grandfather did not remember our names, did not remember how to go to the bathroom. And at that moment, he didn't even remember that he couldn't stand. He hadn't stood on his own in 3 years.
Wow.
He hadn't been able to get out of bed in 3 years. He hadn't been able to do anything. But there was so much love and gratitude and honor for this country that he loved so much that it was just whatever he had to muster. It was almost like instinctual. And he stood up for the entirety of the national anthem with his hat over his heart. And then when it was done, he sat down and he never stood up again. And I say that's the kind of heart that my grandfather had for this country. And that's the kind of heart that he sort of, without preaching about it, sort of instilled in us. And again, just he was a remarkable human being. My optimism comes from him.
Hey there, good looking. If you're digging this podcast, and check out our book, Puke and Rally. It's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. Just go to pukeandrallybook.com. Now back to the show.
I love the story, and I can see where examples like that would simply tattoo on your soul the impact that he made on your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You had a successful business, and you weren't until your 40s that you had a hinge moment. And that's what this podcast is all about, that one moment, one event, one person that makes all the difference in our lives. Share with us that hinge moment, please.
Hinge moment. Okay. So I'm 46 years old, right? Married 26 years, had raised 2 amazing kids, taking care of, both of our moms, both his mom and my mom lived with us, and checked all those boxes off. It's great. And one day I looked in the mirror and I said, who the hell are you? And what have you done with Berta? I had checked off all these boxes that society deems necessary that we check off. And I was full of empty, man, Rob. I was just like, what is happening here? Where am I? I got lost in all this shuffle of the busy and the success and the marriage and the raising the kids. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, you know what, if I don't start living it with intention, if I don't start doing something about it, this is just going to be a miserable existence for the, 54 years I have left, right? Because I plan to live to be 100. And it was wild. And then I don't know what happened, Rob, that suddenly things sort of started happening. I think once you put yourself in that position where you're open to what God, I call it God, some people call it universe, whatever it is, can start doing that work in you. You have to be open to it. And man, he did, and over delivered. And, within months of that incident, I received this invitation to this mission trip. I started flying, which I'd always wanted to do. I started this professional coaching course, never thinking I would leave. I was in real estate on the title insurance side. Right. Loved every minute of it. Never thought I would leave it. But everybody would call me, hey, coach, hey. And one day, one of my daughter's best friends comes over and she'd had a bad breakup. And she said, listen, you should really be a coach. And I said, oh, people call me that all the time. And she said, no, but you should really do it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, you can get certified and you can do that for a living. And I'm like, what the hell? What? And 2 weeks later, I started full-blown investigation mode, and I'm sort of like a detective. And 2 weeks later, I'm enrolled at the University of Miami. Again, thinking I'm just going to see what this is about, the certification course. I'll take it and have it in my back pocket. And man, it was crazy because that was the mission trip came about in July and in January. We had 9 months to prepare for this climb, and we were going to spend 3 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania serving these children. And the coaching course started in July. I had started flying the December before, and sort of everything just started shifting in the direction of my life and my dreams. So I went on the mission trip, had a great time. We spent 7 days on the mountain, and I thought I was going to die, but whatever, from Miami, postmenopausal grandma, first mountain, let's do Kili, let's go. We don't even have hills.
You went big.
Yeah, we don't even have hills in Miami, But I'm very like you, right? Summit or die. I'm gonna summit or I'm gonna die try. And you know what, Rob? When I came back from that trip, I sat my husband and my kids and my mom down, and I said, "Listen, I'm retiring from Tidal." They thought I'd fallen and hit my head on the mountain or lost too much oxygen at the top. And by this, I got back October 4th. By December 31st of that year, I was retired. I gave away my business, my Miami business. I gave away to some really good people that I had worked with for years, and my Orlando company. I gave it away to one of my close.
And you had given that away.
Given it away.
Yeah.
I had three. My underwriters were after me. You know, 3 really, really good offers to buy it, but you have to leave your license for 6 to 9 months. And I was like, listen, if I'm done, I'm done. And by December 31st, I was done. I was coaching full time. I wanted to have the time to be able to work with these children and commit to really making a difference and never look back. God was extremely generous with me. I give him all the glory. I know that that's how that happened, the way that it happened. But it's been a hell of a ride, Rob. It's been crazy.
And how is the work with the kids? I mean, talk us through, that progression and how that operates now.
Yeah, the work with the kids has been, and it's something I've always wanted to do. I mean, if you looked at my vision board, I made my first vision board in 2007, and it was sitting and hanging in front of my toilet so that I would see it at least twice a day, right? And it was everything. It was working with Masai. It was volunteering. It was Killy was on there. It was being able to serve these children on a greater capacity. These children that I didn't know. I mean, I knew I had done, extensive volunteer work as a volunteer coordinator here in my community, but not really knowing how much need there was out there until I got exposure to them through this organization, One Child. And, there's just so much need. And this is one of those sponsorship organizations where you can actually meet the kids, where you see that the work that's being done, where you see that the money that you're investing every month, practically every dollar is going straight to, projects and development with the kids. So I just said, I need to be a part of this. And I just committed. I came back, I got 20 kids sponsored, and I got super excited. And these kids, it's remarkable. And I'll share the story of my first child that I sponsored for this climb. His name is Sibao. He was 5 years old at the time. And Rob, we had 23 climbers in this group, and each of us sponsored one child. So we were raising just under $6,000, which would help them get from age 5 to graduate high school, medical, nutrition, and educational needs met. That was their best way, because these Maasai people are living so far below the poverty line that they cannot afford to send their children to school. Schools in Kenya are public, but they're not free. Right. You have to pay for the uniforms. You have to pay. So it's either, listen, we eat or we go to school. And it's just hard for them. And they're beautiful, amazing, generous. I say there's nothing in the world like the smile of a Maasai person, right? And the fact that we got to meet them and we got to interact. So Sibao, they assigned me to him, and he's who I was going to be doing my fundraising for. I get his first letter. So Sibao sends me a letter, and they ask him what he's praying for. So for the Maasai, the livestock is their status in society. Okay. So he tells me that he's praying for a cow for his Baba, which is his father. So they don't know me from Adam, One Child, this organization. So I call them and I speak to the VP of engagement, who's the one that we're dealing with about the climb. And I said, listen, I have to get Sibao a cow. And they're like, listen, we don't do that. And I said, no, wait, you understand. His letter says that he's praying for a cow for his father. So I need to get him a cow. And Jack Eanes at the time, he's laughing and he says, listen, we don't do that. We are a sponsorship organization, whatever. And I said, I need to speak to whoever can or I need you to connect me with someone in Kenya, because I need for this child to understand that his prayers are being answered. And if God is going to use me as a mechanism to be able to do this, I need to make it happen. So he probably figured, this Cuban, she's not going anywhere. So he says, listen, give me a couple of weeks. So he calls me back a couple of weeks later and he says, listen, we found someone in Kenya that can get you a cow and get the cow delivered, whatever. So I'm like, perfect. How much is it? He says, it's $267. And I said, like, for the whole cow, living, breathing.
$266?
200, yeah. So $267. I go, like, living, breathing cow, like a real one, not just a side of meat or whatever. So he's laughing and he goes, yeah. And I said, well, can I get him food?
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you away.
Said, yeah. I go, can I get him too? So he's like, you're really pushing or whatever. So by the time that I get to Kenya on the trip, that we met our kids the day before we left for the mountain, you know, his social worker who they work with at the center had in his, he goes, I mailed these to you already, but I knew they weren't going to make it in time. But here's the picture of Sipao and his mom with the two cows. And I was just blown away. I got to meet him, his mom and dad, his grandmother, who was they're very matriarchal there. And it was like, I'm talking about it and I'm all full of goosebumps. So fast forward, you know, we're on this trip and we have all these other climbers, and somebody mentions, you know, hey, did they show you the pictures of the cow? I don't know if it was Jack or the president at the time, Mark. And I said, yeah, I saw the pictures. And everybody starts asking, what cow? And then they're like, hey, how come we didn't know about this option? So I said, why don't we put together a livestock Christmas fund, because we got back in October, and maybe we can just help these kids with a little push. They're very resourceful. The women are very, very entrepreneurial. They're very community. They, you know, if one gets a chicken and another one gets a chicken, they'll put those chickens together and feed the community. So that's what happened. So then I took advantage and I said, okay, I'll send them 2 goats. And then by that time I had other kids that I had sponsored, you know, as part of, you know, my work when I came back. So today, Sipao is 12. He is, his 2 cows are now 7. His 2 goats are now 12. And what's beautiful is that now his family is a family of 5. You know, they have the grandma in the middle and his uncle and his wife, and the 3 kids live, you know, in the same little plot of land. And they take all of the excess and they just share it with those in the community that don't have. And it's really a beautiful thing to see that they're not, you know, they could barter and sell it, but they don't. They just take the blessing and they pay it forward, and they see how they can help everybody. So now we have 13 kids, and my goal is 100, right? But we have kids everywhere: Haiti, Ethiopia, India, Cambodia, Philippines. And the goal is that I want to meet all the children that I have sponsored. You know, I'll be back in Kenya in July, so I'll be able to meet. I focus on Kenya because I know I'll always be back there. But I've been to Cambodia and visited, you know, 3 of our sponsored kids there, and you know, it has, you know, I'll never be able to give them what I get from these kids, and you see the evolution, and it's just crazy.
Bert, I wanted to ask you that follow-up question. Do you think that you help out the kids more, or do you think that the kids help you out more?
Yeah, the kids, I'll never be able to repay what they do. You know, now when I receive, in fact, I just got 2 letters this morning that I'll respond to. And you just have this relationship with the kids, and you know what's going on in their lives. And I can never repay what I get from the kids. So I got super excited, Rob. When I got back, I wanted all of my friends to experience what I was experiencing. I wanted all of them to be a part of that. You know, my granddaughter sponsored her first little girl when she was 4 years old. You know, we had to go online, whatever. So now she's 9, she has 3. We met her little girl from Cambodia. I'll be meeting her 2 girls from Kenya when I go back. And she's like, Mima, I know you want to sponsor 100, but I want to sponsor 200 kids. So what's crazy, Rob, is when I got back from that first trip, I had a journal for the mountain and a journal for the rest of the mission work we were doing. And since I was transferring out of offices, I was retiring from my company. I just got a small office in my husband's building, and I lost one of the journals. So my son, who lives in Orlando, when I finally found it, I just put everything into the computer so I wouldn't risk it. So I sent it to my son and I said, hey, everything you want to know about Africa, we'd had conversations, of course, but everything you want to know about Africa is on, I just sent it to you. And about a week later, he's a creative writer. And about a week later, he says, Mom, you've got a book here. And I am not a writer, right? And I said, listen, if you can turn this into a book, I will pay to get it printed and we'll donate everything that we make to one child. And we did. I think it was a very, very therapeutic process for me, because that re-entry, when you see something like that, you feel like really we're complaining because they gave us a venti instead of a Trenti at Starbucks, or just like it changes your entire perspective. And I just started, I said, I just want people to experience what this is like. And my friends and my family, everybody started sponsoring kids. So then one child reached out to me, and they asked me if I would be on their board. And I was like, hell yeah. I want to be able to really effectuate change. And it's been, like I said, Rob, it's been crazy, but I will never be able, I don't care what I do, I will never be able to do for these kids what I've gotten out of this sponsored relationship with them.
And you mentioned the gratitude and the perspective piece. I was wondering if you could just delve into that a little bit more. Seeing what individuals have to go through, and we complain because we lose perspective ourselves. How does that impact your life on a daily basis, and then even with your family and even with your coaching? How does that impact you?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, Rob. And I think one of the most interesting things is that, listen, there's so much power in generosity. I think that it's not, and I tell people I'm really upfront about my generosity. I'm very selfish when it comes to generosity, because I do it because of what I feel. Sounds bad, but it's true. I mean, I think we're born to give, and that's why it feels so much better to find that perfect gift for someone than if you receive the perfect gift. That's just our core. I believe that you have to beat that out of people. I believe that you train that out of people. I don't recommend it. I don't know why anybody would do it, but I think that at our core, that's how we are. So when, we're in these villages and we're going into these Maasai villages, Rob, and, you go into these little mud huts that look like they're falling apart, and we had the honor of being invited into some of these homes. And you walk in there and you're just looking around and there's nothing, Rob. There's dirt. The floor is dirt. They might have a few little pots and pans and a little bushel of twigs that they use for fire. And they are the happiest people you can ever imagine. So I'm sitting there and we're with Sipao's grandmother. And you're walking in and you're looking at this home and they've got these smiles on their faces. And they're just so grateful to be able to host you, to invite you into their home. There's no keeping up with the Joneses and look who has what. And I mean, it's just, that is non-existent. They are just trying to see what they can do so that they can bless the people in their community. And Sipao's grandmother, which I have it back here, she takes off this beaded necklace that she has on. They're very good with their, and that's what they do for a lot of them. What they do is create these necklaces, and she takes it off from around her neck and she puts it on my, around my neck. And I'm thinking, here's a woman who is blessing me. I mean, I have water coming out of my tap. I have bottles of water in my fridge. I have everything at my disposal. And I said, and she's just pouring on me. She's being generous. She's and the gratitude that I felt, not because of the gift that she was giving me, but because of what that means to them, it's impossible not to be changed. I say that no kid should graduate high school in this country without visiting a third world country, right? Because we would never get it. I was 47 years old and I would have never understood it if I hadn't experienced that. And then you bring all of that with you, and you're trying to convey the message of, guys, we have it so good. We take everything for granted. And you never look at anything materially again, but I think I came back with how dare I complain sort of mentality. We took, the moms and the grandmas and the kids are the ones that really do all the work. The men take care of the livestock and the Maasai sort of tribes. But the women and the children are the ones that do all the work before the kids go off to school. And they sometimes have to walk 2 or 3 miles to even get to school. They really want to go to school. So we were helping one of the grandmas one day, and she has these 3 jugs. They put a little ribbon and they hang one on their head and one over each shoulder. And they're going to this little water hole like this with a little scooper. And they're just scooping until they hit water, and then they're filling up these 3 jugs, and they get very, very heavy when they're filled. And they do that by themselves. We were helping them that day, but that's what they go through every day. And they come back, and that's what they use for washing and for, cleaning and for, their food and their needs. And then they go back and do it again in the afternoon. And it's a 2-mile walk. And I just, I kept one of the president's wife, Dee, who was with us. She's like, you're going to have to just stop crying. You're going to have to just stop. And of course, after a few days, you sort of get into the flow, and you become more accustomed to it. But you come back and listen, Rob, that reentry for me was a bitch. It was a bitch, because I fell into a hole that I'm thinking, I think it came from the frustration of there's no way that I can do enough. And if there is, how do I do that? How do I make a difference? How can I let these people know, listen, what I experienced matters, and it made a difference in me, and I want to help.
Right.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
Berta, it's really fantastic. And I think it reveals, your soul, your heart. Don't you hate it though when Starbucks does get your orders wrong? It's kind of, I'm sorry. I was like,
no, I know.
But I get it. Every morning when I put ice in, cause I'm a early AM guy, when I put ice in there, that's my reminder to be thankful, because I'm just realized like ice is really a huge gift.
Huge gift.
Every time I grab that there, and it's there.
Yeah.
How has it impacted? Because you're an adventure coach. You like to do some fun things with your clients. Talk to us about like being an adventure coach and how that impacts that.
Yeah, and that's great, Rob. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the adventure coaching piece came from Kili. I was in the middle of this coaching certification program. All the climbers knew it because they had really done a good job about letting us get to know each other. So we were on this mountain for 7 days, and sometimes people would say, hey, I'm having this issue with a coworker. Can I walk with you today? And I say, listen, I need the practice. I need the hours. Let's go. And I found that I had already been doing coaching, because you have to start doing coaching from day 1 of the program. And I found that people were much more open, much more vulnerable, and much more willing to share when they're out in nature, just breathing in real air or not breathing in enough air, because as we got higher and higher, there was less and less oxygen. And there was just something really magical about that, the vulnerability that you feel when you're in the outdoors, doing something adventurous, doing something that we don't know if we're going to summit, because we don't know if somebody's going to get sick or somebody's going to puke and not rally, right? And when I came down, I think that was a huge gift for me. I came down, and I remember when I caught up with my mentor coach at the University of Miami, I said, listen, does adventure coaching exist? And she said, what do you care? It does now. And that's how that was born. And I realize that if I can get someone to jump out of a plane with me, I can accomplish with them in 6 months what might take me 3 years at a Starbucks, right? Because you get them out of that comfort zone early. You get them to face their fears early. And once they face their fear and really get out of their comfort zone, they start questioning everything else that they feared. And once they can start doing that, they're just checking things off. They're like, hey, this probably isn't real. This is probably a limiting belief. Where did it come from? Is it your limiting belief, or did you inherit it from someone? Is it really your fear, or did you inherit it from someone? We inherit them all, except for the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, but everything else is injected. So it really was a tremendous gift to be able to have that perspective for myself, and then to see how it was affecting everybody that I was on the mountain on. It was just, again, that's God. No other way to say it.
When you mentioned Starbucks again, it just got me back to, don't you hate it when they get their order wrong?
Yeah.
When Berta, you're such an amazing person. Walk us through, like, what is it about the adventure and doing something that's very difficult that transfers into their other parts of their life?
Okay, I can give you a really great example. I had one of my first clients was Maria. I'll never forget her. We became good friends, and we're still in touch. When I started coaching, she was just out of a really toxic relationship that she'd been in for 9 years. She had gained about 100 pounds. She was just miserable. She lost her home. It was during the craziness of everything that was going on. Lost her home, was living with her parents. Her dad wasn't doing really well. Single mom. Just there was so much heavy, and she called me one day and she said, listen, I've known her for a number of years. She said, listen, I feel like I'm in quicksand and I can't get out. I'm not drowning fast enough, but I can't get out. So we started working together, and it was just really beautiful that, I think once they take that step, they're already really, really far into their own transformation. Right. So the youth fair is like our county fair. Every year it comes to town. So I said, listen, let's just go blow off some steam and we'll go to the fair. We'll bring, her youngest, still young. I said, we'll just go and shoot the shit. We're going to go have fun. And I love the roller coasters and the whole, right? And she said, oh, I don't go to the fair. And I said, why? And she said, because I don't ride anything. And I'm like, why? And she said, because I'm afraid of heights. And my advice to everyone out there is, you never tell an adventure coach that you're afraid of heights. Right. So our next session, we used to meet at Starbucks. And I said, listen, Saturday mornings. And I said, listen, can you just be here at 5? She's like, what? And I said, just meet me at 5. And she's crazy. She showed up at 5. So I put her in my car and I drove about an hour and a half from my home. There is a little town called Clewiston, and they have a Florida Air Ridge Park where they do hang gliding. So of course I drive up, I'm in a pink convertible Beetle. We had a great time, drive up, and she's hyperventilating in my car. She's like, what are we doing here? This is crazy. And I said, listen, your flight is paid for, but I'm not going to force you to do it. I'm going to do it. You can stay here and take pictures of me, and it's going to be great. But I want you to know that your flight is paid for if you decide to do it. So it took about 45 minutes for it to be our turn to get up there. And you know what, Rob? She dared to do it. She dared to do it. She strapped up. She was up at 1,000 feet for 11 minutes. And when she came down, man, I remember like it was yesterday. She came down and she said, if I told my parents and my kids what I just did, they would never believe me. And I said, actually, they will, because I had them record the entire flight. And you have enough video and pictures in there that you can always remind yourself that our fears cease to exist the moment that we face them. That's it. That's their life expectancy, is as soon as you cross that threshold to face them, they're done. And what happened, Rob, that she started then questioning, what other lies am I telling myself? And it was a very, had nothing to do with me, because she's the one that, suited up and got in there and did that. But I think what happened was that, and as we worked together, a lot of the questions were around, what else is missing? What else doesn't seem right? What else doesn't seem like it's yours? And, she had been in the same job for 30 years. She changed careers completely. Again, nothing to do with me. She lost a ton of weight. She has a great relationship with her parents and with her kids. Her kids are grown now. And just the transformation of her becoming who she always was, but giving, she was just hiding it in all this stuff that didn't really belong. And she's a remarkable human being. She always was a remarkable human being, but now I think she realizes it herself. And I think that's probably the best example that I can give you to answer that question, because that really is something that every one of us has in there until we have you fall and you realize, hey, I've got to get back up. And then you go and and listen, I'm going to throw up, but you know what? After I'm done throwing up and puking, I'm going to rally and I'm going to regroup and I'm going to, so it's a lot of those things that I know that you're so committed to teaching and living and just doing life that way. That's really what it's all about. It's just making that invitation to someone who is not aware yet that that's the only missing piece.
What do you think is the biggest limiting belief that, in all the coaching clients and your podcast, what do you think is the biggest limiting belief that people have?
I think the biggest limiting belief is, and they suffer from, I think the self-sabotage, the fear we can deal with, right? And the self-sabotage is something that they suffer from. But I think the biggest limiting belief that most people have is that they can't, that they just can't. And the truth is they won't. Not that they can't, they won't. But they just, it's a misinterpretation of the limitation. And they feel like they can't, and it's not even they're not capable, because when you phrase it that way, they'll challenge you on it. But it's just, they don't even, I probably didn't think I could climb a mountain because I hadn't done it, but I didn't know if I could do it or not because I hadn't done it. But I think that's a big one that just keeps coming up, and the way that we all are talking to ourselves is extremely toxic, and we're not aware of it. And I tell people from the bat, listen, if you wouldn't say it to your kid, you can't say it to yourself. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't say it to your boss, you can't say it to yourself. And you catch them, and every time that you catch them, you sort of tweak it a little bit until you hear that even their conversations when they're talking out loud change. But I think that default that we can't is just there, and it's our job to challenge that.
Yeah. I always say we got to be so careful about what we say to ourselves because we're listening. Berta, you talk about being a serial passionista. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. I love that. And it's so funny because my daughter just left this morning. She went back home and she's, one of the most serial passionistas that I know. And I think what it is, Rob, we have so much on our plate and we want to do so much. And we have so many, we're great. I think as humans, our brains are wired to come up with ideas. So the problem becomes in bringing those ideas to fruition because we get distracted or we're not following through on 90% of what we set out to do because then something new comes along. And I have, pages and pages and pictures of whiteboards that I keep stored of ideas and things that would seem great, but I'm not even following through on the basics. And what happens is for serial passionistas, and if they're out there, they can relate. You have one idea and that evolves into a million ideas before you even get this one off the ground. And you find that 2 or 3 years later, you're going to come back to that original idea. Right. Just, you didn't do it. So I think that's one of the things. And there's a lot of lack of focus. I think there's a lot of, and I think that's where what we do is so beautiful, is that we can put everything down. I'll do a 4 or 5 hour strategy session sometimes. And my son says I have my office. I'm in my home office now. is a giant whiteboard with an office around it, right? But when you go there and you start putting everything down and you're able to look at everything, you can start to compartmentalize and you start moving the needle. And until you do that, these people that have all this busy in their heads or on their shoulders and they don't realize it's just stuff.
Because you talk about like the problem isn't your passion, it's your process.
It's great. You have to have the passion behind it, but it's very easy to lose steam if your process is not consistently moving you in the direction of bringing that to fruition, bringing that out into the world. And listen, I've spoken with people and sat down with people that I say, the world needs you. What are you doing? Oh, I've had this idea forever. And it's just nobody is making the invitation to let's sit down and look at it. Let's sit down and look at it. And I think that's, I think as coaches, we're not being more, what is the word I'm looking for? We are not being more assertive in believing in it with them. And if we can believe in it with them, because sometimes I say, and my daughter will tell me, or my son will tell me, you want it more for them than they want it for themselves. And I'm like, because I see it. How there are some people that can walk into an old house. My husband is like that. Okay. All my cousins are like that. They can walk into an old house and they see the new kitchen and they knock down this wall and it's going to open up this area, whatever. I don't have that. I walk into an old house and I'm like, build me a new one. I don't have the patience. I don't have I can't visually see it. I need to see it. I don't have it. But when it comes to people, Rob, I see it, man. There's a block of I can't even draw a stick figure, right? But I can imagine that that's what these great sculptors see. It's that block, like Michelangelo said. I just, I see, there was a block of marble and I just set the angel free with David. And it's just, the masterpiece is there. And it's very easy for people like you and I probably, and a lot of really great coaches out there, for us to see it. All we have to do is chip away at everything that doesn't belong. The beliefs, the fears, the them getting in their own way. You start chipping that away, man. And as soon as they can see it, you're done. Yeah. You're done. That's where the magic happens. Mm-hmm. And that really turns me on. That sets my soul on fire.
Berto, what question should I be asking you that I'm not asking?
Did they mess up my order this morning at Starbucks?
Did they?
No, they did not.
Most of the time they get it right.
They got it right. Listen, I don't think I've ever gotten it wrong. I don't know, Rob.
What's your usual drink?
I'm boring. Grande non-fat latte because it's the most like a Cuban café con leche. That's that, or a hot chocolate if I'm in the mood. But that's it. I'm like super boring. Like my daughter's, her text is 25. Lines long.
I'm boring too. I'm a grande Americano.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. That and a classic coffee cake, and I'm done. $7.71. Boom. I have 2,600 stars sitting in my rewards little bucket right now. I can be somewhere for a month and not have to pay for one drink.
What should I be asking you that I'm not asking?
Okay, let me see. What should you be asking me that you're not asking me? How about, how can someone get involved with changing the world for a child?
Oh, I love it.
Right?
Yes.
Everywhere. Even in our own neighborhood, there is an opportunity to make a difference in the life of a child. And I think that if we can breathe life into children's dreams at an early age, we'll never have to worry about fixing the adult. And I use that word very loosely, right? And I think kids are forgetting, I do a lot of the book that I wrote about the Kili climb. My kids and I did a children's book as if my granddaughter had done the climb for Sipao. So it's called Chloe Climbs for Sippy. We found a great illustrator out of California. So I take that book and I do a lot of career days to talk to children about the power of generosity and the power of missions. And some of them don't know and don't have that exposure, but the missions are sometimes in our backyard. And I talk to a lot of kids these days, Rob. And my first question is, what's your dream? And I go around the room and I ask each one of them. And it breaks my heart when an 8-year-old doesn't have a dream. And they're out there. I know they're dealing with stuff. I know that there are issues. And listen, sometimes it's our own kids. You know, as parents, we're busy. And now we have these electronic devices that make it so easy for us not to feel like we are ignoring our kids. But we need to be asking all children what their dreams are. And I think if we can do that enough and get them dreaming and help them understand that they are capable and it is possible, and that, you know, once that seed of a dream has been planted in their heart, they have everything that they need to achieve it, man, the world would look very, very different. I believe that the world would look very different if people were really working in the direction of their dreams, especially when it comes to children, because that's the least that kids can do, is to be dreaming. And when they're not, nuts.
Berta, I really appreciate the time. Where can people learn more about you, but then also get more involved?
Sure. My website.
And we'll put the links on there too.
Yeah. Okay. Is probably the easiest way. I'm very active on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'm Berta Medina Garcia. My website is just bertamedina.com. And guys, if you haven't done it in a while, just go and Google wherever your hometown is. Just Google volunteer opportunities, and just see. I know there are limitations now because of COVID, but there is so much need. If you don't find anything, whatever pantry in your local community exists, they need the help. They need the help. I've been doing a lot of work lately with Feeding South Florida, with Miami Rescue Mission, and with Broward Outreach. These are organizations, you know, that serve the homeless, organizations that serve, you know, people that are in hunger. You know, we're still in this pandemic and people are still not really working. The food lines here at a nearby park are still aggressive when they have them. So there are just a lot of opportunities to serve. And if you can get your little ones, listen, eventually for high school, they're going to need it. But if you can, what I would do is my kids, the earliest they could volunteer was 8 years old. So for their 8th birthdays, that's what they would get. Hey, congratulations, you have to start volunteering. So by the time high school came around, they had thousands of hours and it didn't bother them because it's part of their normal life. But the sooner you can get your kids serving in the community, it's going to get you to do it with them. Those bonds that you're going to create as a family are going to be things that they're going to talk about and brag about more than any vacation, more than anything else. So if you can get out there, but just there are so many opportunities to serve folks, and you know you want to, because if you're listening to this, you know you want to, but just get out there and do it. Just, you know, check it off the list, and once you do it once, you'll get addicted, I promise.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Mental Toughness Podcast.
I really appreciate
you. If you like
Rob.
what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast.
For your friendship, for your guidance,
you can also check us out on Twitter at Dr. Rob Bell, or visit our website at drrobbell.com.
An opportunity to have a conversation with you.